Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Laura Ries. She's a branding, marketing guru, and best-selling author. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's so glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. You've had an amazing career, kind of across a bunch of different things, and you've done some really cool stuff. And you're a author and kind of TV personality as well. But maybe before we kind of get into what you're currently doing, let's start off and get to know you a little bit better and start off with kind of where you grew up.
Yeah. Sure. I grew up in just outside of New York City, Long Island. If you're from the area, you know the accent. And I am the only child from my dad's second marriage. So I spent a lot of time with my parents, as only children know. And my dad at the time ran an advertising agency in New York City. And I just thought he was terrific, and he is. And he still is. And I remember going to the office and, watching everything that was going on. And, my dad he's all about marketing and he's all about positioning. And, the book that he wrote that kind of changed everything. And so from a young age, I was interested in the business. And so I, followed that passion and everything. I went to college at Northwestern out in Chicago. And then after college, I spent a little over a year working at another ad agency, TBWA, in New York. And I was on the Evian account and the Woolite account. And then, just dream come true to have the opportunity to work with Al. He, split apart from his previous partner, Jack Trout, and we opened Ries Ries in 1994. So it's been a great ride. We're still having a great time, and there's nothing better. I mean, having a family business and learning from my father, being his partner, even on more equal terms now has really been an exciting place to be.
No, that's great. So for people that haven't kind of heard of you guys,
yeah.
What exactly do you guys kind of do? Because you guys have a bunch of different things that you do, and I think there's no better time almost in history to really kind of care about kind of marketing and PR and kind of branding, because there's so much noise right now, right? And we're inundated by so many things on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so
sure, yeah.
What do you guys?
Go ahead.
What do you guys exactly do at Ries Ries?
Well, we help position our clients' brands. We help with the marketing strategy to ultimately the idea is owning a position in the mind, which was, back. It's funny because if the first book my dad wrote was called Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind.
Sure.
And back then he wrote about how difficult it was to get into the mind, and they were complaining about the amount of advertising. And look now, over 30 years later, it's even worse, right?
Yep.
Of course, this is getting more challenging. So, that is, part of the reason why brands are so important. And I think like you said, there's been a realization of, it is important to have innovation, but it's also important and great service and a great product. But it's also important to have a great brand along with that, and that goes to the name, to the position, to the importance of the category, to the visual, to the slogan or battle cry. All of those elements are incredibly important. So, we don't help a company develop their product or service, but we help in how they develop the communication and marketing strategy to get that, to own that piece of real estate in the consumer or prospect's mind.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So how do you guys kind of engage with a company to actually, kind of market and position their brand? Yeah. Because that, to me, is probably the most complicated part of launching a product.
Sure, it is, and big companies as well as entrepreneurs, and we work with both types and everything in between, from business to consumer. So we specialize in no one industry, but what we specialize in, what we have the ability to do is kind of, simplify things, be able to look at a complex situation and find the simple solution. And that, is very difficult and very challenging, of course. And really, what our business comes down to and what drives it is, the books.
Okay.
For years, Al has, written 12 books that, have become very well read, very well respected, and talked about different principles and given examples and, immutable laws and different things out there that have really resonated and helped people to understand marketing and give them better tools and strategies and techniques for doing better marketing and for their product or service when it comes to the importance of having a focus, the importance of, PR over advertising and launching brands, and, on and on, all these different things. Now, when it comes to consulting, for one of our books is the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding. Well, you can't apply all the laws at once.
Sure.
It's the difficulty is knowing, which laws apply to each given situation, and that's where we come in. I mean, if someone is a fan of the books, that's usually what brings them to us. They say we would love to have their personal input on our situation, and our business is one-day strategy sessions where we work with them and we have a team meeting. We all work together. It's important the give and take, I think, because companies, they have so much information, but sometimes they need an outsider to come in and help give some perspective. And when it comes to marketing, that's our expertise to say, how do we best verbalize, visualize this? What is the best way to focus, or what should we focus on? All too often companies want to get into more stuff when the opportunity is really to narrow the focus, to do what Tesla did, right? To focus on electric cars only and, become, one of the highest valued auto companies in the world. It's amazing.
Sure. No, I think that's really great. So maybe let's start with kind of the visual hammer side of things, then we'll move to maybe the Battlecry kind of book in a few minutes here. So what do you guys, or what do you kind of cover in the book, and give us some kind of principles and stuff that people can kind of take away? I also do encourage them to actually pick up the book because they're both very inexpensive. Like they're basically the cost of a cup of coffee for right?
Yeah, well, these days with Starbucks, absolutely, coffee is no longer cheap. Everyone wants the expensive stuff. Well, it started with, the idea of, positioning. And
Okay.
the thing about positioning is owning a word in the mind. And the book and a lot of the philosophy talked about words, owning words in mind, talked a lot about slogans and such. But as we talked and mentioned, it's so complicated out there, and there's so many words and tweets and texts and everything else. The key understanding a few years back was, we've forgotten visuals.
Sure.
We've forgotten about the pictures and the importance that they play. And really, it's the emotional part that can communicate that, where you take the same idea, like, for instance, baby, right? You take the word baby. If you're trying to communicate, and you could use the word baby, or the same idea you could communicate through the picture of a baby. Now, in the end, you say, well, you're communicating the same thing. Is there any difference? You bet there is, because I see a picture of a baby and, my heart melts and I get goosebumps, and, you have, or maybe you don't like a baby, but you have some emotional reaction where the word is just a cold word on a page. And so knowing that the key in many brands is, yes, the ultimate objective in branding is to own an idea in the mind of the consumer. But the best way to drive that idea in the mind is a visual hammer. That's why we call it a hammer. You're driving, the idea into the mind. And whether, in the book we talk about, well, what kind of visual hammers are there? Well, one of the most classic is the original Contour Coca-Cola bottle that you now see on a lot of their marketing. And that is a powerful visual hammer because it communicates not just, this is the Coca-Cola brand. It communicates that they are the real thing. It communicates their authenticity and their credibility. And, that is more important than ever now, but it always has been. And so if you have a visual that's not just attractive or, colorful or pretty or something, it's about something that drives the idea that you stand for into the mind, whether it's the contour bottle for Coca-Cola, it's the lime in the top of the Corona beer
Sure.
bottle, right, the Mexican beer.
Yep.
It's the straw and the orange for Tropicana. It's, the the kernel at Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yep.
And the opportunity now is as well that as we go global, the importance of a visual is even more important because it doesn't need a translation. You can use that visual around the world and bring people together with that one unifying visual that stands for your brand.
No, I totally agree. So how do people, though, even start coming up with or brainstorming ideas? Because to your point a second ago, like when you said the Corona thing, like I get that you can obviously put a lime in basically anything you want, but when you think about that, at least like my mind, and I would say a lot of people's mind, is Corona. Like they go there instantly, right? You could put it in tons of other beer, tons of everything else, but like people just think of that, right? And so how do you even start that? Because it seems a bit, well, it not really a bit, it's a very kind of daunting task to say, like, I need to create something as iconic as, the Corona lime or the Coke bottle.
Well, yeah, you don't go into it thinking I want to start something iconic. And I didn't work on Corona, but we can kind of walk through what happened with them and how they came to that and why it was so effective. Corona was in Mexico a cheap working class beer. It had a painted label, which was seen as, not as prestigious as Dos Equis and other brands. It wasn't served at the fancy hotels. It was a nothing.
Sure.
And the distributor and importer got an idea to let's take this brand into America. And we're going to sort of rebrand it, if you will, as a popular Mexican beer, and that has a unique looking bottle that it was painted, and we're going to take it in and we're going to focus on Mexican restaurants, which as well were rising at the time. So it's not always so important. One key distinction is consumers don't really care about brands. It's the category that they care about, and the brand then represents that category. So what Corona had going for it was the rise of the Mexican food and brand category, that they were able to establish themselves as the first, authentic Mexican beer, even though it necessarily wasn't. But
Sure.
They came in with a good distributor, and then and into the restaurants. But the visual difference in the identity was to put the lime in it. Now, what is a lime? Well, lime is very much associated with Mexico. Mexico is a lime country. If you've ever been there, they have limes in everything. They put limes in because they grow a lot, they use a lot. They don't have any lemons. America, the United States of America, is a lemon country. We drink lemonade. We put lemon in everything. We put lemon in water. So for an American to see that, they say, oh, lime means Mexico. And so that subtle, and they do sometimes put it in beer. And so that was a unique difference and visual that, got people's attention. And then, became basically, the visual hammer for that brand. And now is also, the communication vehicle, that's what they use on their trucks and in their billboards and everything, because it stands for that they dominate that category of Mexican beer. And they are now, 17 years in a row, the number one imported beer brand in America. They surpassed Heineken many years ago. And that dominance is also what sustains them over the long run and makes that visual iconic.
No, that's actually really interesting because I guess like I've worked at marketing companies, but I've kind of always been behind the computer on the tech side, kind of the design side, and so like I sat in kind of meetings around this stuff. But it's interesting that it's basically obviously they're using something like visual to represent that, but almost the strategy behind that really has nothing to do with kind of the visual, to your point, where they're using like a lime from the country and trying to ride the trend of Mexican food kind of growing in popularity into America and stuff like that. So that's actually really fascinating to me. And how do you kind of go about doing the research to kind of come up with the visuals to bring a brand or potentially bring a brand into kind of the stratosphere of being the highlight of the category, or at least into the category, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the challenge, because you never start with what visual can we use. You start with what are we trying to do. You have to look in the mind and say, where are the open holes?
Sure.
When for Corona, I mean, the European beer, well, that hole was already filled. That was Heineken, which many people think was German, but it was Dutch. But I mean, that was already filled. To be a better beer from Europe, which Beck's and many other brands try to do, that, I mean, it's much more challenging than trying to be first in a new category, and that is one of the basic principles we've talked about for years. You can't. Many companies try to be better than the leader. We're going to be better, and we're going to win by being better. No. You never win by being better, but you can win by trying to define a new category. And the good thing is, and we wrote a book about this too, is the origin of brands, is that over time, every category, divides, leaving opportunities for new brands to come to market. I mean, it used to be there were just cars, right?
Sure.
Well, then you had sports cars and sedans, and then you had trucks, and you had pickup trucks, and you had SUVs, and now you have electric cars. And in all those, new categories, if you will, new brands came to market and to dominate in those, in many cases, those different categories. Today, of course, we have Tesla and the electric car. Well, every major manufacturer has an electric car in their lineup, but none are as successful as Tesla, because Tesla owns the idea.
Sure.
All the others are line extensions on the traditional car brands. Where the real opportunity is having a brand that represents that category and then can claim leadership in. So when we work with someone, it's first and foremost is understanding their brand. Does it stand for anything? One of the other key principles is if you own something, if you stand for something, it's going to be impossible to change it. Listen, Kodak was one of the world's most loved brands, right? But they owned film photography. You can't change that. They tried to change and say, oh, we can do digital too. That's not going to work, not if they put the Kodak name on it. You see, the difference is they could have gone into digital and been successful, we believe, but they would have needed a second brand name, not the Kodak name. And, way too often companies are too in love with their brand names, and they don't see the opportunity that a new category needs a new name.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an incredibly important difference, and all too often big companies, in particular, are so in love with their brands that they don't see the opportunity, and why entrepreneurs, who are feisty enough and willing to go out and launch new brands and new categories and have the patience for those categories to take off. Listen, most categories, they don't take off like rocket ships. They take off like airplanes. It's a long, bumpy ride down the runway. It was 10 years before Red Bull hit $100 million.
Sure.
And today it's almost a $10 billion brand. Because it was a new idea, and it takes time to get new ideas into the mind. I mean, listen, Red Bull is expensive. It tastes terrible. It was a product from Thailand, but the entrepreneur from Austria that launched it on a global scale, he did research before he spent all this money and launched this brand. And it came back terrible. The people that, they'd never seen this product, and they were asked, do you like it? Would you buy it? And they said, no way. I don't like the taste. I don't like the price. I don't like the small can. I don't like this, and I don't like that. And he did it anyway. It's very hard to research what people would do in the future. And so, it took time to build that brand for people to understand the category, and then, they understood the significance, and the funny thing is, and the importance of PR and word of mouth. One of the things that helped Red Bull was it was sold in Germany and in Austria, and it got banned in Germany. The government said, you kids, you can't have the stuff. Well, if you have kids, and the last thing you do is tell a kid you can't have that, and that's all they want.
Yep.
And they were driving to Austria to get the stuff, and one of the things that got people really excited that this stuff was really great.
No, that's actually really interesting. I actually, now that you mentioned it, I remember it when it got banned and like how big of a
Yeah,
deal it was. And I
it
remember
was a
even,
big deal.
yeah, and it was the same
Yeah,
with
and
like,
it's funny because
no, go ahead.
yeah. No. Well, sometimes people get so concerned about, you might say that that's bad, publicity. But in the case of Red Bull, it was terrific.
Yeah, no, and I remember that with like at least in Canada there was a cola that was like had lots of caffeine in it, and it
Oh
got
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
banned. Was it like Jolt or something maybe?
Yes, that's right. It was
And
double the caffeine.
yeah,
Jolt, yeah.
and like it got so much publicity, and I remember as a kid like the one friend that got a case or something, we all were just like, and like looking back now, it was kind of a little bit ridiculous because like whatever, right? But as a kid, I
Yeah.
remember like just having to have that, right? Because you're like, I gotta try this, right? So in some ways, it was probably maybe the best marketing campaign that they never planned on doing.
Well, indeed, but it actually brings up a really interesting point because what what really is the energy drink market, but just soda that has extra caffeine and vitamins and other stuff. But instead of launching, and Red Bull could have said we're just extra caffeinated, soda.
Yeah.
They called it an energy drink, and the idea of creating that separate category, when is it really a separate category?
Sure.
I mean, what is if the other example is, what is a power bar? Energy bars. I mean, aren't they really very similar to candy bars, but you call it an energy bar, and people have a different halo around it because they perceive and it's really a slight difference, maybe a little bit less sugar, but it is amazing how, these slight differences and categories are really important. One, if you can have your brand, perceived as, it is just another candy bar, but we call it a power bar, and we say it's an energy bar, and it's seen as a separate category and as then a wild success.
No, that's actually quite fascinating. So I want to kind of get into kind of your book Battlecry and kind of what's it about, because I think it's very much tied to kind of the visual stuff we've just been kind of talking about. So what exactly is that book about, and why did you decide to write that?
Well, after just kind of thinking of all the elements, we work on with companies, and also noticing the what works and what doesn't work in the marketplace. We spend a lot of time, reading, articles and staying up on many brands and categories. Slogans are something that are talked a lot about in advertising, and companies use them on everything from, their websites and really what makes a good slogan. And, in particular, we saw that, with the slogans were getting worse and worse. Yeah. In some cases, they were trying to get really short and really cute, and none of them were working, yet they were spending, hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, what's Ford's latest one? I think it's Go Further or Find New Roads, or, these in particular, the auto companies spend enormous amounts of money, and they have these just ridiculous slogans that nobody remembers, and they don't drive any ideas in the mind. So, and again, really, like, there's an importance of the visual. There's also a need for words. In particular, we're very much in belief in the power of word of mouth, the importance of PR, and that can drive word of mouth. And part of that is giving consumers and customers and prospects the words to use, and words that are down to earth, that they're willing to share. No one says, I bought that car to find new roads. But they might say, I bought that car because it's the ultimate driving machine.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, for BMW, the ultimate driving machine is a classic battle cry. It's something that people can easily say, and they willingly do. It works on the dealer show floor. It works internally of the company, what they should be looking for in building their cars. And it's also interesting if you look and think about, many times people are very, literal of the slogan has to be correct, but is it really the ultimate driving machine? I mean, maybe wouldn't a Ferrari be better?
Sure.
You have but you have to. You can have a little bit of creative license, if you will. if it's given the right situation, I think in the case of BMW, certainly do. So the book Battlecry is about, first of all, you have to know what your brand is. For BMW, is focused on a performance type of car versus, their enemy, if you will, or Mercedes-Benz, which was luxurious and a comfortable ride. Well, they were the opposite, and that's always, there's an opportunity for generally two brands in every category, but the strong number two position is always taken by someone who's the opposite of the leader. So that's in the case of BMW. So again, you have that focus. You have perhaps that visual. For BMW, it was commercials with, driving on winding roads. But then you have to have the words to communicate it, the ultimate driving machine. And again, in the book, we also talk about there's also just linguistic techniques that help things become more memorable. One of the challenges, like we said, the over-communicated society is that, how do you get people to remember them? Well, again, a lot of things you take from your life. If you have a kid, how do you get them to remember things? Well, many times you use things like rhyme, right? Rhyme is a classic way to get people to, or anyone to remember something. And if you use it in a slogan, it makes it incredibly more memorable. We have our postal service has a slogan that says, "If it fits, it ships," for the priority mailing, and you have the box. And that can drive through clutter and help people to remember, understand it, and also it's a rationale for using it. It's a motivating idea. So again, it's not about using any rhyme. It has to be meaningful to what your brand is. So I said there was 5 techniques. There's rhyme, there's alliteration, classic, and lots of brands in their names use it as well, from Dunkin' Donuts to Coca-Cola, or alliteration for the slogan itself can be helpful. Repetition is another, that you just simply repeating something, can be used, like Little Caesars Pizza says, pizza, pizza, pizza,
Yep.
pizza.
Interesting, yeah.
Now, why do they repeat it? Well, their promotion for many years was two pizzas for the price of one, because they created a new category, which was pickup only. Right?
Yeah.
There was no delivery. You picked it up, and that's cheaper, so they had a cheaper price. And 2 for 1 was an easy way to communicate it. Today, they say $5 pizzas, which basically the same thing. It's Pizza Hut, it's $10. Here, you pick it up, and it's $5. Pizza. Or reversals can sometimes be an interesting way to communicate an idea. For many years, Burger King said broiling, not frying. Again, it's the contrast between McDonald's fries their hamburgers, and we're different. It's the flame broiled taste of Burger King. It was also a grown-up idea. They never quite, they had the silly, king and the subservient chicken that, got people's attention, but did it drive an idea in the mind? Something that they have not been successful to do, even though, in our opinion, they had some worthwhile ideas there, and particularly the, grow up to the taste of flame-broiled burgers. And now you have, the better burger chains that are, people said hamburgers were dead. No, maybe they just weren't marketing it right. So,
Sure.
There's an opportunity there always, many times for new brands. And the last is double entendre that you can use. And one good example of that is De Beers diamonds. And they say a diamond is forever. Of course, it's, the diamond engagement ring is what they're trying to sell, that if, the diamond's forever, your love's forever, we'll just forget that 50% of marriages end in divorce, but, you just get married again and you buy another diamond, so everything's good for them. But, that's a slogan that women love, believe me.
Sure. So I'm curious, though, because, obviously what you've kind of talked about, I think most people have heard that stuff, but is some of that stuff a little bit trial and error? Is that kind of a lot of market research, a bit of both? Is it kind of, how do you come up with these things? Because you guys work with brands that everybody's heard of. They can go to your website and check that out. I don't really necessarily want to get into actual clients, but how do you guys kind of work with a brand, whether they're small or big, to actually come up with something that could be very memorable like that?
Well, again, I think the importance is not just to make it memorable, but to have it specifically drive the word into the mind, whether, in the category and the position. So the key really is that I think many consultants or companies or agencies, they're very focused on making something, attractive and memorable and unique. But first and foremost, you have to start out with, what is the opportunity?
Sure.
Can we legitimately go after that opportunity? Do we, or do we need to sort of reshuffle things of how we directly communicate it? Not just so much that it sounds right from our perspective. I think a lot of companies are concerned about this is what we think our brand or our service is, but how is the consumer going to see it? How does it fit into what they understand about the category or the market? And sometimes that's a case of the first car was not called a car; it was called a horseless carriage.
Sure.
Because that was an easier way to have people understand it. The challenge of a new category is that people's never heard of it, and it's difficult to explain. And if you can do so with words that are easier to understand, make more sense. Energy drink, for example, is a good category name, and as a result, then Red Bull is a good brand name because what represents energy more than a red flag in front of a angry bull.
Yep.
Picking names are really a big part of the process, and I think the most important part is identifying the position or whole open opportunity in the mind, and then devising the strategy to get in there, right? So the name is critical, and picking the name Red Bull. The name Monster, which is the number 2 energy drink, again, they achieved their success by being the opposite of Red Bull. Red Bull was an 8.2-ounce can. Monster came in with a 16-ounce can.
Right.
Clear example of thousands, over 1,000 in 1 year. Over 1,000 companies launched energy drinks.
Yeah.
I mean, it was insane. Everyone saw the opportunity, right? From Coca-Cola on down, launched energy drinks. Coca-Cola
Sure.
launched, TMX was the first one.
Yeah.
And the biggest company in the world, most successful, beverage company, couldn't make a success of it because they didn't have the right strategy.
Sure.
It was the wrong name. It was a copy of Red Bull. They were trying to just be better. You can't be better than the real thing, and that's what Red Bull was when it came to energy drinks. Monster succeeded by saying, all right, you got the small can. Maybe there's an opportunity for a large can, people that want more value, that want more drink, or who knows. And they launched the large can, and they gave it a large can name called Monster.
Sure.
And then they took the idea of Monster, and they created a visual that drove in that name and that idea. And so, it worked together. But the key insight, was being the opposite of Red Bull, the
Sure.
16-ounce can. Or at the other spectrum, there's the little shot, energy shot, and 5-hour energy,
Yep.
which has also been as successful. And again, it's that new category idea, and then picking a name that helps you in driving the idea, and then having and finding some unique visual that can help drive those ideas, and perhaps even a battle cry, a slogan that can help people remember it, as well as give people the words to talk to each other. I mean, Red Bull says it'll give you wings, right?
Yep.
And so all those things, can work together. But first and foremost, it's finding that opportunity, that open hole in the mind, that new category, or going against the leader in an existing category. I will say, and you asked, do we do it? We don't do a lot of research. In generally, clients, have bring us and show us any research they might have done.
Okay.
But most of it is analyzing, the situation, listening to the client, looking over the background. And clients, they know a lot of these things. I mean, everyone knew what, Red Bull was, and,
Sure.
it was the challenge of saying and thinking of, well, okay, we know what that is. How can we be different? the general, and it's common sense, right? Well, let's just do what they're doing and do it better. I mean, that's what gets you in trouble. But if you have the mindset, okay, this is the marketing principle. If we want to beat the leader, we got to be the opposite. Or if we can't beat the leader, we got to start a new category, the energy shot category, for example.
Sure. So I'm curious to know your take, and obviously I think it's probably you need to have like a well-known or a brand that has a lot of backing to like where you have like a product placement either in a movie or television show or kind of a celebrity endorsement. Like, do you guys kind of do that kind of stuff? Do you think that stuff kind of still works, or kind of what's your take on those?
Well, I think they work when they're authentic and when they have some type of credibility with consumers. When you force the issue and you pay a movie a lot of money to use a product that they would never want to use anyway,
Sure.
and they put it into the production, I think consumers see right through it. I mean, just the way the problem with advertising is you talking, telling people that you're great. Well,
Sure.
that's not believable. What's believable is somebody else telling me that you're great, that third-party endorsement. And so, for, the way around it is, well, let's pretend it was, E.T. used Reese's Pieces candy, and it was, got a lot of talk about it, but that was authentic, that they saw that, connection within the movie as opposed to it just being a paid product endorsement. And now consumers are more skeptical than ever about a lot of those things. When it comes to celebrities, we are a celebrity-obsessed society. One of the problems is every celebrity is hawking everything.
Sure.
But it still can work incredibly well if, again, there is a believability. You've got the popularity of the celebrity and whether or not they make a mistake. I mean, Tiger Woods being a prime example of one of the most highly paid celebrity endorsers ever.
Yep.
And then he got into trouble, and most of his companies dropped him like a hot potato. But even in the case of Tiger, who in his prime was perfect, right?
Sure.
A good-looking, going to be on track to be, the greatest golfer of all time, and he could always get himself out of trouble and not on the golf course,
Sure.
and he's winning tournaments, right? So, terrific. But did he work for every brand he endorsed? Absolutely not.
Sure.
One example was, the Buick paid him to be. But did anyone believe that Tiger would drive a Buick? Are you kidding me? He's making $100 million a year. He's not driving a Buick. I mean, let's be serious. So, in that case, it made absolutely no sense. For Michael Jordan and Air Jordan, I mean, one of the most classic celebrity endorsements of all times. And of course, it was incredibly iconic. He wore the shoes.
That logo, even, right?
Of course, that logo is a classic visual hammer. I mean, and kids today know Michael Jordan because of that. Kids today know John Madden because of his endorsement and celebrity connection. And again, those are very tight because those celebrities are part of the product, and especially the launch of the product. And as opposed to just appearing in one TV ad, which doesn't tend to work very well. And now companies see that. Vita Coca, Madonna's to endorse that she's got owns now a part of the company kind of thing.
Sure.
And so but again, that becomes overdone, and it has to be really believable that Madonna's drinking this all day and bathing in it. And does anyone care about Madonna anymore? I don't know. That's another problem.
Sure. So we kind of, I want to go to the other side of the spectrum, where maybe they're a new company or a new brand or something. What are things that they can do maybe on the cheaper side of things? Because obviously not everybody can afford to do some of the stuff that we just talked about. But what are things people can do maybe on the cheaper side of things?
Well, you make an excellent point, and when most brands, startups and entrepreneurs, they don't have a big budget, and they don't have a lot of money, and so they're in some ways it's good because they're forced to think about the things that don't cost a lot of money,
sure,
and are really important. Like I said, the most important thing is what's the name. choosing the right name doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And so the name is incredibly important. Again, thinking about the visual. I mean, just the shape or the color, what the package looks like, the use of, animals can sometimes be a good visual hammer. Twitter and the bird,
Sure.
they didn't spend a lot of money, but they were more memorable because they had a striking connection to, again, they focus. I mean, everyone had a blogging site, but they said, no, we're going to be different. We're going to focus on 140 characters. That's it. And then we're going to pick a name. Well, if this is a short blog here, we're going to have a name, Twitter, tweet.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right? It's short little things. We're going to have a bird, and it's going to be one color. It's going to be blue.
Yep.
I mean, they picked all those things very, very specifically, and those were incredibly important in building that brand. So, those things don't cost money. It doesn't cost money for your CEO to become the spokesperson and do a lot of media interviews and speeches. Having a well-known CEO and founder is incredibly important part of a startup. Sometimes they can get you into trouble, like the guy at Uber, but
Sure. Yep.
but that brand is the amazing thing about that is, for many companies, I mean, having a CEO that did some of the things and said some of the things he's done would be a killer. But the brand is so strong.
Yeah.
The strength of the brand and the marketing and the dominance that they've been able to achieve allows you to kind of weather the storm and ride through some of that stuff and survive.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So you kind of touched on it, and I want to know your kind of thoughts on kind of building yourself or somebody at your organization or company into kind of a thought leader. Do you guys kind of do some of that stuff, or is that kind of left to somebody else?
Yeah, no, we are laser focused in terms of what our company does, and like I said, we're always working on books and speeches, but
Sure.
The business is the one-day strategy sessions with Al and myself and the clients. We leave all of the implementation up to the client themselves. So we spend the day working out the strategy, thinking about, and it depends for each client, whether
Sure.
it's thinking about names and visuals and battle cries and PR strategies and working all that out, and then leaving it up to them to find out, hey, who within. We do make it clear it's important to have someone within the company that can be the champion of that, but they also sometimes having some outside help and support is important, and adding perspective. I mean, we have and work and multiple times with CEOs of companies that they just need somebody to have bounce off these marketing ideas and keep them on track. The
Sure.
interesting thing about marketing, as you go on in time with a company, it is good to experiment and to try new things, but you also have to do some pruning. It's
Sure,
kind of like
yeah.
it's kind of like a tree, right? You what keeps it healthy is not, you got to keep growing. But you also have to prune back the stuff that's not working or that doesn't make sense for this brand. Maybe spin it off to a new brand if it's really big, or just get rid of it if it's not working. So there is that balance, and that's where where we've worked with clients on multiple occasions over the years, where that comes into play. Or like your closet, you might. You get everything tidy in your closet, and you say, "I'm going to keep it like this. I'm going to be neat." But after a year, it's a mess again.
Yeah, sure.
And that's what marketing is like, and within any company it's like that. So you have to be very mindful about it. And again, in general, companies do the opposite in terms of like, we just want to get into more stuff. We're going to put our name on more things, when staying focused, standing for something, dominating a category is really the most successful type of strategy that any company can follow.
No, that's interesting, because I kind of figured that would be your response, but I guess like I would put you and your father in that kind of like category, right? Where you guys are obviously thought leaders in this industry, and you've been doing it a long time, and you have the clients, and kind of through all your different kind of articles and books and whatnot, and success and coverage by third parties to validate what you guys have been doing, right? And so it's interesting that you kind of just your take on that, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's, it's certainly, I mean, it's really fun what we do. I mean, it's fun to
Sure.
go into all these different, situations and, help them strengthen, what they're doing. And that's, in general, what a lot of it is about. I mean, it's amazing and so interesting to go into these companies and such, from dental tool products to,
Sure.
to big, global consumer brands, or we have a big, the leading auto company in China that we work with, and all these different situations, and see in each of them, real potential, a really exciting idea, but sometimes. A lot of times, it's not being cared for properly.
Right. No,
Usually,
fair.
because they're into too many things. I mean, one of exciting success story of a client we've had is Great Wall Motors in China,
Okay.
and as the market took off, and there was just a ton of Chinese auto manufacturers that came onto the market to serve the growing middle class, and they were one of many, and like all the others, they had a wide range of different cars and trucks on the market. What really got them the attention and their success was their pickup truck.
Sure.
But then they, like many companies, they got into everything to serve the market, if you will. And so they came to us and our partners in China and said, "What do we do? How do we grow? It's we're not how do we stand out in the crowd? There's just so many companies." And so we told them, you gotta get out a lot of these things. You got to stand for something. You got to focus on one model, actually. And we told them to focus on what we saw as the biggest opportunity for them, which was the affordable SUV market, which was under, and they had a specific number even to it. It was the leading SUV under 100,000 renminbi, which is about $14,000.
Okay.
And so they did that and became the most profitable Chinese automobile company, and they dominate in the economical SUV market, which has also taken off. They rode the success of that category because your success depends a lot on the strength of your category. So in any case, it's very exciting to see that, but it was also hard for them. When you own automobile plants, it took them time to get out of a lot of those things. I mean, strategy is a very long-term thing. And so it was also a matter of, where their focus lie. I mean, if you have a company, you're doing a lot of things, but you have to, it's helpful to have someone say, this is what you really need to pay attention on. This is where you have to spend most of your time and marketing dollars promoting. You might do other things, or you might slowly roll out of these other things, like for Great Wall, it was the sedans and other
Sure.
things. But they spent all of their time promoting the economical SUV, the brand Haval, which is also looking at expanding on the global market and has a lot of potential, we feel, in part because it has the right name. I mean, very challenging to the Chinese language is very difficult in terms
Sure.
of words that sound right in English, which is really the second language of the world. A true global brand has to sound right in English, doesn't have to be an English word. So
Interesting, yeah.
it's really a challenge, but it's having the insights to be able to figure out what the best strategy is. I don't know how we do it sometimes. There is no magic formula, and there's no magic machine, and I don't. It's always a hard question to answer. But I think when you have all the principles and you study what has worked in the past with applying different strategies, you have then the ability to be able to give the best advice on what would work in any given situation.
No, I think that's really good advice in itself. But Laura, sadly, we're coming to the end of the show. So let's close with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys, the company, the books, and all your other kind of services that you guys provide.
Sure. Well, that's easy. Everything you can find out anything about me and the books and anything else at Ries.com, and it's bestsellersbooks.com. And of course, all the books are on Amazon. I say local retailers, but are there any left? I don't think so. If you want a book, you can go to Amazon, or there's links on our website. And I hope you enjoyed listening. And we love branding. It's an exciting industry. It's always changing, but the key is owning a word in the mind.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.